8-minute clip of an old firm game at Ibrox, at the far end, all Celtic, with the rest Rangers fans, and an atmosphere you cannot believe, Christy. And my son, who played football and pro football, said to me, "Dad, you cannot turn down Rangers if they come in." But I knew I had a hook, so now I wasn't this academy geek. I suddenly had their respect, rightly or wrongly, because I had a very competitive background, albeit in a different industry, and that's really been very important to have something. You need. Coaches ask me all the time. Young coaches call me. What do we need? How do I get in? I want to be a full-time manager. I'm sure you do, along with a million other people as well. When I landed in Glasgow, first day, I was met by a reporter, a really good guy, who said to me, "Never forget there's a good cop and a bad cop in Glasgow. Never too bad, never too good. You have a good cop and a bad cop." He went, "And right now you're going to be such a good cop." And I said, "What? If I lose my first 6 games?" He went, "You're the good cop. One is the bad cop, one is diner."
So, Mark Warburton, welcome to the podcast. I want to begin by starting at the beginning of your journey. How did football become a passion for you in your early career?
Just as a kid, really, Christy, always loved the game, played the game. I love sports in general, if I'm honest with you. So I ran to a good level and just really enjoyed sport. But football being a global game, just obviously that was a passion. Had the chance to go to be a young Scot apprentice when I was 16 from school. Loved that side of it, and didn't have a great experience at Leicester City. I had different views to the manager. I'm saying, here's a young boy, who am I to have a different view to the manager? But it was more about enjoying what you do, enjoying the sport, and that lesson I've said before many times stuck with me, Christy, right the way through. And then I went into playing like conference football, semi-pro football, and work in the city. But I've always maintained the love of the game. I've always enjoyed the watching, the learning. That's never gone away. I was very fortunate to work around various places in the world. I lived in Charlotte, North Carolina. I lived in Chicago. I've worked in New York, overseas in Asia. Wherever I worked, because you have a British accent, they presume you know football. So you end up coaching every team that you go to. So I've been coaching, an under-9 girls team, a high school team, a college team, a bank team. So I've coached a variety of teams, to completely oblivious to the fact that there were qualifications. As ignorant as that may sound, I had no idea. So of course I came back to the UK and get told, what badge have you got? And I quickly realised that I had to get my qualifications sorted and move through the ranks, so to speak, to allow that to happen, which really was done combining with a city career as well. So that was the most intense period of my life to date, really.
How did you balance that in terms of your career away from football? You mentioned your city career, and as well as maybe non-league football. How did that shape you as a coach to have a longevity in a journey that enables you to manage and lead people?
Yeah, it was tough, if I'm being honest with you, in terms of the demand. So, I played for teams at Enfield. They were probably the best non-league team in the country. They won the trophy, etc., Wembley, and a very, very good team, well managed. And that, with a city career, which saw you get up at 4:30 in the morning every morning, get home at 7:38 at night. Literally, it was a really tough call, Christy. So a very tolerant family. But it was a difficult one. But I knew what I wanted to do, and the city career started to take more and more of it. And then, as I say, I went to go and live in Charlotte, North Carolina. Came back, I missed I was offered a green card, believe it or not, in the States. But I missed the football. Came back for that, but it was really hard to combine. And when people sometimes interview and do various columns and reports, and they talk about that smooth transition. No, I try and not to paint a grim picture. I'm just trying to paint an honest picture that was really demanding, And I had one saving grace down the line when I decided to make that full-time move. I didn't actually make it. I was still at RBS, but my son was a young academy player at Watford. So the only saving grace was that my wife could be having my daughter, and I could actually go straight from the city, get down to the training ground in Watford, and then get back home with my son at whatever time of the night, because at least it lessened the burden on her, so to speak. So that was the one saving grace. But it's not. It was a tough ask. You have to commit to what you want to do. You have to get your qualifications. You have to get experience. As I say, for me, it was then about making the big decision to leave, and then spend a year travelling around Europe trying to improve that education, Chrissy. But it's, as I say, I wanted to do it. I was committed to it. But you've got to make sure, if you're not committed, it's a tough journey to take.
It's a great self-belief to have, and a persistency to become a football manager. Did you ever have times where you self-doubted yourself, and how did you overcome those obstacles to keep a belief that you can break into a football manager role or a coaching role full time?
Yeah, it was never actually, in all truth, it was never, I never saw myself as being a football manager. Not for not wanting to, just simply I knew I never had the quality of playing career of a Steven Gerrard or Frank Lampard, Wayne Rooney, Ole Gunnar. I just never played to that level. I was a bang average conference player. So therefore I knew I always had that Achilles heel. So I saw myself as being in the academy. So I was offered to go full time. As I say, I spent that year going around Europe, Christy, and I must have called 40, 50 clubs and got blanked. All I wanted to do was visit and see how they talk their players. And one guy called Diogo Matos, who's still a dear friend and works for FIFA, invited me over. He was academy director of sport in Lisbon. And I got to spend a lot of time with him, play golf and a lot of time. And they had players coming through their ranks, the likes of Figo, Ronaldo and Quaresma and Nani and all these players. So a great learning environment. Learned a lot from him, but he opened doors to me at Ajax, Barcelona, PSV and whatever else. So that was to improve the education. But I just presumed, with the lack of playing career, that I would be an academy. I want to be an academy director, first of all. But then I realised you have to be a big club to impact positive change. If you're a small club, you just get, same as at the top level, is the big boys have all the power. So that's how I saw my career path, and got on very well with Eddie Boothroyd. And I was focused on the academy, and very quickly he asked me to become academy director at Watford, which I really enjoyed. We had a big part of setting up the school at Harefield, the first of its kind in the country, to incorporate the footballers, the boys, to combine academic and sport and achievement, which I was really pleased. I'd seen that on the continent, and there was a good program in place already at Harefield, and we could adapt to work with them, which was a real privilege, Christy, in truth. The education side was important to me. And as I say, I just saw an academy future ahead, thinking, how can I keep moving forward here? As only when Matthew Brennan phoned up, the Brentford owner, who I'd come across previously, trying to try and buy Watford when he couldn't buy Brentford, that he asked me to go in and coach the Brentford team when we got rid of the manager then. So that was a move into senior football, but I never envisaged for 1 second that I would be privileged enough to do that, simply because I was too poor a footballer.
Talk to me about that transition then, working in the academy and then working at Brentford. What managerial skills did you have to adopt, or was there anything that you learned maybe in other disciplines that were used to work with first team players and kind of think about negotiations and everything else that comes with maybe the first team squad and maybe managing above and other stuff? How was that different? No,
it's a very good question, Christy. I mean, from my point of view, I was very fortunate in the city to work with some outstanding people and work for some outstanding bosses, one in particular. And the dealing room is such a similar environment to the dressing room. It really is. So if you can imagine, we were on a trading floor, might be huge, but our particular area was a currency trading. So at the time before the euro, you had dollar Deutschmark, and you had Mark Paris and Danish and Scandis and dollar yen and sterling. And so, and billions of dollars go through every day, billions. And it's a team, so you have the traders, you have the assistants, you have the sales guys, you have the backup people. So it's a team, and it's about communication. It's about togetherness. It's about helping each other out. It's about, it's a tough environment. If you do well, you get rewarded. If you don't, you move on. So many similarities to a dressing room and to the football world. And you can take that in. A good leadership is about, in my mind, is about creating the right environment for people to learn and develop and thrive. And they've got to enjoy coming to work. And I enjoyed, as that's what I remember about one of the best bosses I worked for. We were on a golf trip once. 4 of the guys were on a golf trip, a beautiful golf course. And it was a Thursday afternoon. We were off to play Thursday, Friday, Saturday. And Friday, there were some big economic numbers coming out, some really big US figures, which would impact the markets. And we looked at each other and went, it's going to be so busy tomorrow. And we looked at each other and we waited for the first person to say it. And we just said, well, we can't miss work tomorrow. And we drove back from Gloucester back to London. The boss said, what are you doing in? But the 4 guys wanted to, because the environment was right. Everything was right to go there and enjoy going to work. And it sounds very geeky, not at all. It was highly competitive. It was a really positive environment to work. It was loud, as I say, lots of pressure, big swings in P&L, teamwork, shouting, screaming. But all of this combined to make the right environment. And going forward, I never lost sight of that, Christy, in terms of make sure that the players enjoy coming to work, make sure the staff enjoy coming to work. And if you can do that, then you're in a good place.
Was that a managerial skill that you've adopted in terms of seeing success at Brentford, or was there anything else added to that? I'm just intrigued to find out a little bit of the promotion at Brentford and how that was significant in a way in terms of developing people and having a winning mentality, etc. Can you add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think first of all, huge shout to the owner, Matthew Benham. For me personally, in terms of being brave enough to take me on as a coach, first of all, then a technical director for a couple of seasons while Uwe was a manager. So again, a really steep but enjoyable learning curve in terms of dealing with the agents, with the players. It allowed me to be closely involved with a lot of the players we signed: Stuart Dallas, Adam Forshaw, Jake Bidwell, Tarkowski's, all of these players. So I had that relationship with them, but also it allowed me. Matthew was superb in that he was obviously buying the club, but the head of medical, we took there, Neil Greig, is still there now. The kit man, Bob Ateng, is still there now. The head of sports science, Chris Haslam, still there now. Kevin O'Connor, who was a player and then was my captain, and took him to embrace him on the coaching side. Obviously, still there doing a great job as first team coach. So all of these guys are still there, and it was all about, for me. I was intrigued as to, a little bit nervous. You're going to suddenly deal with first team players, but what you quickly realise, Christy, is nothing changes as long as you're clear, communication's good, you're honest with them. You make sure they enjoy what they do. You set the guidelines of what you expect from them as a professional player and as a human being. And so for me, if there's one word that encapsulates everything, it'll be respect. So how you talk to each other, how you act, how you conduct yourself, how you train, because you have respect for the profession, respect for your teammates, respect for the staff. So that was a big thing. But very, very quickly, we had a good first day at Brentford. I remember it really well. We had a good first day, and it just went from there. And then when Uwe moved on, I was now itching to be a manager and a coach, having tasted it and then being technical director. But I was always very respectful of Uwe. Great friend, and we would talk to each other every day and argue, shout, and whatever. But we always had a united voice when we left the office. But I would always respect his parameters, Christy. I was a technical director in charge of basically the academy, the first team, the medical, sports science, and analytical, etc. But I never put a tracksuit on, and I never went inside the white picket fence around the training pitch unless he called me in to discuss a play or whatever it is. But because for me, that's his domain, and I didn't want him to ever feel threatened or feel that I was trying to encroach. And I always showed him that, and we've spoken a lot, Uwe and I, but I think he respected that. And I was itching to go, I love being on the grass and training and working with players. But I, as I say, thoroughly enjoyed the TD role, learned an awful lot in a short period of time, as you mentioned earlier, contracts and whatever else, how they operate. And again, you could find out very quickly that Matthew's discipline in terms of the contracts, but it allowed you to be disciplined. So, we want X a week. No, we're offering Y. No, X, a deal doesn't get done. Okay, we'll move to the next player. Then 9 times out of 10, the agent invariably, maybe we can do Y plus a little bit. No, it's Y. That's what we can afford to play. That's the budget. There's the owner. And that discipline really helped us, Christy. And as I say, Matthew was fantastic. But you learn that side. And as I say, when Uwe left, I remember I'm a Spurs fan. I was going to an Arsenal game. Someone invited me to an Arsenal game. And the phone rang about 12 o'clock. It was Matthew who just said, would you like to take over as manager? And I said, I'd love to. And he said, okay, let's chat tomorrow. And that was it. And so suddenly you've got that. That side of it, Christian. You're in the manager's hot seat, and as I say, from there, everything really changed.
You mentioned your values in terms of discipline and respect. Where do you think that comes from, Mark? Does that come from mentors, your upbringing? I'm intrigued on why you find them valuable within certain workplaces, such as football.
I think my parents, obviously, your upbringing. I think that goes for everyone, Christy. Your upbringing is very, very important. So my mum and my dad was a die-hard Geordie fan, but very respectful way I went about things. And my mum had an outstanding work ethic. She was the one with numbers. I'm fortunate to be good with numbers. I'm awful at many things, but I'm very good with numbers, and hence work in the city and whatever else. And she had that side and the work ethic. So that was definitely a big part of it. But it's just your character as well, and mentors, and watching how people do well. As I say, people in the city, their work ethic. I hear people criticise bankers and bankers' bonuses, and they have no idea what's involved and the money that's produced and everything else. They're very ignorant of so many facts. And those people work tirelessly hard. As I say, I'd get in the office at 5:45 in the morning, and then by 6:30, 7:30, it's absolutely packed. And at 6:30, 7:00 at night, the same people can all be there working away, getting phone calls through the night. So that work ethic and the discipline as a teammate, there's no point 9 guys making X amount of money if one person then loses a whole lot. So the discipline and the togetherness and the communication, all these various attributes, I'm saying attributes, I believe they are attributes. I think, it's so important. If you're gonna have success individually or collectively, you've got to have the guidelines and the rules in place. And as they're not draconian by any means, and people thrive with some freedom, and it's how much freedom you give them to allow their flair to come through. And as I say, for me, discipline, respect, these type of words are so very, very important. Without them, I think everything crumbles.
You said you're good with numbers. Was that applied within your coaching practice as manager at Brentford? Were you looking at certain periods of the season where you could win points? Were you looking at analytics? I'm intrigued on whether that transparency happened from your coaching point of view and how that experience from an early years, trading, etc., was applied within your role as first team coach.
Yeah, I just found numbers easy. I just found that was just something that came. Maths and English was for me were the easy ones to do at school. I was lucky to go to good grammar school. So again, go back to your previous question. Again, I should have mentioned I was very fortunate to get into Latimer Grammar School. Worked hard to get in there, and that was a really strict regime and discipline. But you're going to get 10 O levels. That's what you're going to do. Everyone gets the same, and you made sure you were up to the standard. And that's a magnificent school. But again, set some great guidelines and behaviours for you. Using the numbers, it was interesting. Going back to my point about not having played at the right level, at the highest level, I knew there was Achilles' heel. So working with someone like David Weir, who played at the highest level and such a gentleman and holds himself so well, that solved that issue. But I needed to have a hook, shall we say, for want of a more technical expression. I needed to have a hook because the players would look at you and go, well, he's never played the game to any decent level. I always had that heel, Achilles' heel there, Christy. But they were fascinated by the city. And I took some boys from Brentford into HSBC dealing room where my old trainee was now a global head of trading or something. And again, they walk in there and they suddenly have an idea of the numbers and the monies and what's going on and the teamwork. And they were fascinated by it. But it gave me something that, that AD, Boothroyd, who was fantastic for me. Now he's working out in India, AD. But he was really good for me. But again, fascinated by the city, asked me to give a presentation to the first team boys at Watford, who had no idea who I was. I was one of the academy guys. Who's he? Then I spoke about the city, and so when you're in the big dealing rooms, people have no comprehension of what goes on, and we would turn over. You had 10 guys around the desk. I'm saying guys, it was male dominated, Christy, at the time. Thankfully, it's changed, but you might have 10 guys trading, and you could easily turn over $20 billion, and it's a team. And you could see suddenly the Watford boys stood up. And I showed them some footage and I showed them some examples and how we traded. And you talk numbers. You talk about how the market. And so one guy said, I remember Jay DeMero said, how did the market move? What do you mean move? And you go 45, 50, 50 paid, 50 bid, 55. And you go through and you see them look at you. But I knew I had a hook. So now I wasn't this academy geek. I suddenly had their respect, rightly or wrongly, because I had a very competitive background, albeit in a different industry. And that's really been very important to have something. You need, coaches ask me all the time, young coaches call me, what do you need? How do I get in? I want to be a full-time manager. I'm sure you do, along with a million other people as well. You've got to have something that differentiates you from the other 500 CVs that will invariably land on the desk. So that for me was a real big hook. So that numbers side of it. So going into Brentford, in answer to your question, as a manager, we say, well, there's only 6 games. What do we think? You challenge the players. What do you think? There's the 6 games. 2 points a game is promotion form. 92 points, promotion form in the championship. 46 games, that's promotion form. What do you think from those next 6 games, the next 5 games? So whatever it was, if I said 6 games, so I said 18 points available, 12 points is promotion form. What do you think? And they're looking around because now they're saying, well, I don't want to come across as lacking ambition, but at the same time, I don't want to come across and make it too high a target. So they invariably go 10. They look at you, 10. Is that what you want? Is that what you think? And then we had a captain called Johnny Douglas, tremendous, drove the dressing room, drove the team, great guy. And he would be the aggressive one. And we set really high targets. And that stuck. And we got promoted in that. Uwe left, I think, October, November time. I took over and we had a really good run. And then we were up there with Wolves right the way through, and Wolves and ourselves got promoted. But still taking the figures through, and we put a really aggressive bonus plan. Again, Matthew being, the way his mind works and how clever and smart the guy is. Again, we had a really, really aggressive bonus plan. As in, if you do well, you get rewarded, but you have to do well. And the boys bought into it hugely. So, of course, when we go up, Christy, we're favourites to go down. Just being promoted, little old Brentford. us, I think Rotherham and whoever it might be at the time. And we said, right, what are we going to do? And again, a really aggressive bonus pool. And we made it challenging for the players. And I said, everyone will underestimate us. And David Weir was great, but everyone underestimate us. There's the first 6 games. What do you think? And we set an aggressive target and I hit it. And we just called people out, Christy. We called people out. They underestimated us as a team, as a club. Didn't like coming to Griffin Park. And suddenly you had factors which made it really hard for the opposition. And then we played with the freedom as well, because again, that underestimation by so many people, as Brentford coming to town. And we went to a couple of places and blitzed them off the park. Not in a disrespectful way, just they weren't ready. If they were playing West Brom or Norwich or Southampton or Brighton, Brighton and Southampton are coming through the lower divisions. If they were playing them, it was different. But we were little old Brentford, and that tag obviously is long since gone. But it was really useful for us, and by the time people realised we were a good team, we were in a really good position.
You mentioned David Weir, and I'm intrigued on your transition from Brentford to Rangers. How did that come about, and was he part of that process, obviously playing for Rangers and informing you on the football club and the significance of it as an institution?
Absolutely. Well, obviously what happened at Brentford in terms of Matthew and I, but because we got to the playoffs and just missed out in the Premier League, because of that, your CV is strong. So therefore, I was very fortunate, Christy, to have some good offers on the table. Some big clubs had made offers, and I'd met with them, and that side of things was all fairly new to me. I'd come from the academy, gone into only been at Brentford, and suddenly you're speaking to clubs as a kid. I'm growing up; these are major institutions, and that was a very privileged position to be in. And then Rangers came along, and David Weir said, you need to speak to them. So this is Rangers. And as a kid, I've always said before, I remember on the radio before we had a TV, you read Star Belgrade and Rangers and their big nights and Man United, all the rest of it. So I knew the history of Rangers, but they were in the Championship at the time, had been relegated, and all the financial issues that are well documented. And David Weir said, you need to meet me. We need to meet them. So we did, and we had a good first meeting, really good first meeting with them, and you realise the enormity of the club. But I was still, don't forget, no disrespect to Rangers, and it never would be disrespectful to Rangers. But I still had some really good offers from big English clubs. And it was my son who actually went out to the YouTube, and there was one of the songs they sing, Penny Arcade, and there's an 8-minute clip of an Old Firm game at Ibrox, at the far end, all Celtic, with the rest Rangers fans, and an atmosphere you cannot believe, Christy. And my son, who played football and pro football, said to me, Dad, you cannot turn down Rangers if they come in. And we had the second interview, and I was sold. When I saw that, and you realise it, and then you walk out Ibrox, and you see Ibrox and the staircase and the marble halls, and David Weir had a massive part to play because he's on the Hall of Fame quite rightly, and he's a legend of the club. So David Weir's word you always listen to. But my son also played a small part as well, Christy. But what a great decision to go to a fantastic football club.
Is that process overwhelming, Mark? Do you kind of go to a big institution and the fan base is so on top of everything that happens at a football club and the rivalry so significant? How was that for you? Because again, listening to interviews with past players and past managers, sometimes they mention they live outside of Glasgow because of the animosity that happens and everything surrounding two big footballing giants within the west side of Scotland. How was that for you in terms of managing the emotional aspects of the club and trying to get the club back to where you think they belong? Again,
I can't highlight David's role highly enough. Also, Frank McParland, who is at Liverpool for 20 years, one of the best recruiters in the world in my mind, and has been a very, very strong colleague and good friend. He was up there with us as well. So we had good people. Jim Stewart, the goalkeeping coach, we had good people. My City background, it kept on giving, Christy, in terms of, I'd been headhunted by various big global banks, and you go through the interview processes and you get some big jobs and you're speaking and you're doing your contracts and you're going into new environments and you're dealing with, imagine you walk into a dealing room and you're the new guy and you walk in and you're sitting on one of the big money earning desks and everyone's looking at you. What's this guy like? Because people want that desk. People internally want that desk. You walk in and suddenly you're there. So who's a new guy? So how you act, how you conduct yourself, how you speak, all the things I spoke to you about earlier. But at the end of the day, you've got to show that you're good enough to do the job. So you've been through that process over a period of 20 plus years. So that held me in really good stead. So going into Rangers, David Weir, again, mine of information for me, do my own research, But it's also, you've got to have the confidence and make sure you speak to the fans in the right way. And one thing that really annoyed me was that people would say to you, you don't know the enormity of the job. And I said, well, what tells you that? Well, you've never played an Old Firm game. You never lived in Glasgow. You know what it's all about. And the ignorance from certain people was beyond belief, Christy, because you go there and you cannot fail to understand what it means. You do go into a complete goldfish bowl, unlike anything else you've ever experienced. When we played Celtic in the Old Firm in the semi-final, Frank had been to all the Liverpool. Frank had been to Istanbul with Liverpool winning the Champions League, and he said, I've never seen anything like this in my life. Crowds, 5, 6, 7 deep all the way to the stadium, and then the noise, and they're a huge club. But you realise that it's I don't want to use the word religion for obvious reasons, but it means so much to so many people. I watched the Newcastle game last night against PSG. You could see, my dad was a diehard Geordie, what it means to them in that it's a different level of passion. I'm not disrespecting any fans of other clubs, my own included, but it's a level of passion up there, Christy, which you have to go. If you're a football fan, an Old Firm game's got to be on your bucket list. And it's understanding what it means to people. And I never had any animosity in terms of where I lived. I lived in the blue part of town, but fantastic people, fantastic city. Magnificent club, and I keep using the word privilege because I think anyone in that position is totally privileged to say you've managed a club of that size and stature.
And what was it like for you going into that semi-final? You mentioned the Old Firm game at Hampden. How did you try and adopt a positive mindset going into a game where you are the underdogs championship team playing against obviously the league leaders? Anything that you can relate to in terms of your leadership and management there that was significant in terms of winning that fixture?
No, I think, as I say, it's about the staff. We do it all together. It's not about one person ever. Everyone contributes in large or small way. But I think that the key one was self-belief. We had played really well through the season. We won the championship by 11 odd points or more. We'd won this training cup. There'd been a Hampden and there'd been a sellout Blue Rangers crowd basically, and they were used to that. But I've said again many times, in the hotel before, we stayed at Mar Hall, which is a Rangers hotel. And we had a lot of young guys, Christy, a lot of young players. Our budget was a fraction of Celtic's on a very low salary, along with Jason Holt and Andy Halliday. Their combined salary was less than a third of one of the Celtic midfield players. So it was a different 9 times out of 10 Celtic would win that game. But going in the night before was just utter belief. And we reinforced we are where we are for a reason. And the worst thing you can do is to leave the pitch with regret. So no doubts going in, no regrets coming off. And we sort of hammered that home all season. And I think that's when you have senior players, the likes of Kenny Miller and Lee Wallace, outstanding. And then we had the rest of the guys, and to a man looking around the night before, we didn't see any nerves. They were just desperate for the game to start. Imagine you're 20 years old, you're going to play an Old Firm game at the National Stadium. It to mean so much to so many people globally, because these two clubs have global reach. And they were fearless going in. So that was a really, really pleasing thing from the point of view that as a group of staff and players, we'd got the environment right, and they had responded appropriately, and they delivered a fantastic performance and deserved to win the game.
How did you cope with that high, and then after playing Hibernian in the final and obviously losing in the final, how did you deal with that in terms of the highs and lows of football? Because obviously such a significant win and a self-belief as mentioned, but obviously from an overall perspective wasn't necessarily the outcome that you set out to achieve in terms of that cup competition. How did you deal with that as a manager and kind of getting over that to pursue further?
Well, Frank McParland's got a great saying. He always says never too high, never too low. So, and you see too many people in football, Christy, who win a game or they win a trophy or whatever it may be, and they're shouting and jumping and screaming, and then you lose a game and it's the end of the world is nigh. And it can't be that high and that low. You have to have a more balanced approach. For me, the delight of Celtic was great. The worry for me was that immediately I knew the expectation was going to go through the roof. Not so much about the final, because everyone expects us to win the final in. And that's another story about why. And I'll be very honest, as I've always said, that the semi-final, 99 times out of 100, Celtic will win that. They were a squad packed with internationals. They're top of the Premier League, and they win it for the X year in a row. And they're going to win that game more times than not. Patrick Roberts missed from 5 yards out. We had a 30-yard screamer from Barry Mackay, but we still played very, very well. But the expectation was roaring, and that was the biggest one. So the high was great of winning the game. Hibernian, of course, we were down to bare bones on players, so it's not an excuse. I've been very honest. Good luck to Hibernian. They won the game, but we were out on our feet, and we only named 4 subs and all these type of things. But the bigger picture for me was this overriding fear that the expectation had reached an unrealistic level. And this was absolutely confirmed for the first game of the Premier League season at home. Stadium looked magnificent. I got there 9 a.m, Christy. 3 o'clock kickoff. I always got there early, went to my office, had a cup of tea, did a bit of work, confirmed that the team talk, what you're going to say, and then David Weir would come in and we'd talk about the team, any final changes. And I walked down the stadium, and it's just, as I say, huge, fantastic stadium. And I see going for 55 on the far side. And that's the 55th title, the record for Rangers and everything else.
Yeah.
And I realised, wow, I'm not saying a nail, I just knew that the expectation was not right. We were still budget-wise, we were way, way behind Celtic. Way behind Celtic. They had the likes of Dembele and Brown, all these various players. Armstrong, Rogic, all these Bitton, all these players, Tierney, of course. And you're looking, going, wow, look at this team in terms of budget, international players. And we still had recruited very, very cheaply, and not cheaply in a derogatory way, but obviously money was nowhere near the same level as Celtic. And yet the expectation was that we were now going to go and win the title. And just my saying pragmatism, my City background, you always look at consequences, and I'm thinking this is so dangerous. And we drew that game with Hamilton, a team we should beat. No disrespect, they know we should be a bigger club, bigger budget to them. And we drew 2, I believe it was, and got some boos and disappointment, and the media suddenly turned. A disastrous start for Rangers. First game back in the top flight, and it's a disastrous start to get a point at home. And then that now you just see the slippery slope start to come, because I changed tacts a little bit, but very relevant, I hope. When I landed in Glasgow, first day, I was met by a reporter, a really good guy, who said to me, never forget there's a good cop and a bad cop in Glasgow. Never too bad, never too good. You will have a good cop and a bad cop. He went, right now, you're going to be such a good cop. And I said, what, if I lose my first 6 games? He went, you're the good cop. Ronnie's the bad cop, Ronnie Dyler. So I went, really? And I saw the abuse that Ronnie received. Outrageous. I've said many times, it would never happen down south, Christy. And he was the bad cop. And then Brendan came in, and Brendan and I shaking hands, the trophy and blue and green and everything else. And the guy said, careful, you're now the bad cop. And I'm thinking, what's he talking about? But of course, you don't realise that until you are the bad cop. And then everything was, in the first year, we went away to Kilmarnock, had a horrible weather, really bad display, but we won the game with a really poor performance, won the game late on with the thing, and fantastic performance by Rangers, magnificent win again at Kilmarnock, it was great. The second year, you do that and win 1-0 with a goal late, and there was a shocking display, fans mortified by poor level of performance. Rangers looked a shadow of the side last season, but it's the same result on the same pitch. Again, that is that type of scenario, and then you very, very quickly realise how the media circus works and how the Goldfish Bowl works. And it's very clever, and you have to deal with it. And the only way to stop it is you're only going to be judged, Christy, against one team, one entity, Celtic. It didn't matter when you get sacked when you're in second place, because Celtic are too far ahead of you. And that's as I say, that's Celtic. And you come out of the Goldfish Bowl and you go, what was that all about? Really, you go, what is that? I'd get the papers brought to my office every morning. Christy, you'd have, I don't know how many pages focused on Rangers and Celtic. You get home and you put on Radio Clyde or whatever, radio, Rangers. It never stopped. Media was hour after hour. It was just, as I say, for me, it was a privilege. It was a learning curve about a magnificent club. Learned so much better for the experience. And I don't know, I did a good job there. And the fans have been good. But you come away from it and go, that is absolutely unique. But you have to have if I hadn't had the City work experience, I'm not sure I could have dealt with that straight from Brentford. City allowed me to deal with it and enjoyed it. But you have to have the weaponry, so to speak, to deal with such situations.
I was just going to ask that because a couple of months back, I interviewed Martin O'Neill and I asked a similar question around how did you cope with the stresses of representing such a big institution. And my question to you really was going to be aligned within what you've just said of, from a mental point of view, how did you cope with maybe the stresses of leadership within that area and, this expectation and trying to reach the heights of that expectation, but having some realism within budgets, etc., and recruitment. How did you cope with that in terms of maybe your mental side and how you as an individual managed that situation?
I'm very lucky as I say, I'm very lucky in that I think I can keep it fairly level. Again, thankful to the city. So if you could, I watched a good friend of mine. We were coming on a train and he had a position in a currency. And he had a big position in the currency. And say, for example, his budget that year was to make $10 million profit. So that was his budget. The currency devalued on the train journey into work. The currency that he had a position in, he bought this currency, it devalued on the way into work. And he lost his entire year on the train journey in. And I'm looking at him thinking, how's he going to react to it? Is it because you see people that smash phones and go nuts and walk out? And he just immediately went in and went, oh no, I'm right. That's the wrong move by the guy. I know I'm right with this. And he immediately reinstated the position. You could never tell if he made money, lost money, whatever. He reinstated it and was proven right and made double the money. But that type of focus and belief and level-headedness, I worked some really, the biggest dollar mark trader in the world, the biggest currency trader in the world. And I watched him and you couldn't tell if he'd made money or lost money, Christy. He would sit there and churn huge billions and billions of dollars, but it's that level-headedness. And I've always tried to maintain that, to try and keep it fairly calm. My frustrations come, my anger really comes, disrespect, I play with people. And I felt, I'm trying to say this in the right way, I've worked from the city where KPIs are a really important thing. And they set targets and you work towards those targets and they're aggressive, but they're realistic, specific, measurable, everything about smart targets. And then in football, I was told at Rangers by one individual that success for me, we had to be in Europe in year 3. This was the start of year 2. We had to be in Europe year 3. And I'm thinking, if we're not in Europe in year 3, then I shouldn't be in this job. But this is year 2. And I was sacked when we were second. And you go, well, we've just come up. Because Celtic had their best year in their history, unbeaten, the best year in their entire history. We were 20 points behind them. But we were still second, having been promoted from the championship. And that's when I get really angry, Christy, because to me, there's a KPI. If I said to you, right, Christy, I want you to go and teach, 5,000 students this month, and you do 6,000, I go, I'm not happy with you, Christy. You're better than that. You'd look at me and go, you set me a target. And it's the same whatever industry you're in. And that for me, that really gets my ire up. I like honesty, I like integrity. But in terms of the actual dealing with, I'm not sure what Martin said as from the Celtic side, but for me, you have good friends. You're very privileged to have Loch Lomond Golf Club and some good friends who take you for a game of golf and whatever else, your family, of course. But I've been very fortunate, that side of it. And when I hear people struggling with mental health, and I've been very fortunate, really good day at work, really bad day at work, whatever, I try and compartmentalize it, and I'm very, very lucky in that respect.
Am I right in saying that you found out about your sacking on Sky Sports News whilst you were watching it on TV before you knew personally? Am I right in saying that?
I can picture it, yeah. And I can picture it now. I'm in a lovely apartment opposite Botanical Gardens, and I'm sitting on a Friday night. We had a cup game the following day, and my mobile phone was on the coffee table I had, and I was just sitting. I was on my own. My family were down south, and I think my son was flying up in the morning, and suddenly my phone started to go, and then I saw on the yellow ticker tape, Mark Warburton resigns his post at Rangers. And it was literally, imagine reading about yourself, resigning from the job that you're in and preparing for the game tomorrow. I had no idea what was going on. Now my phone is jumping around like a crazy goldfish. You imagine what's going on there. And I phoned David Weir. I said, David, I think I've just been sacked. I turned away from the screen. I went, David, I think I've just been sacked. And I won't use the exact language that David used. He went, I think I have as well. I turned around the screen, David Weir, we all resigns from Rangers. And Christy, it remains this day scandalous for so many reasons, because one, Rangers fans, some of them thought we would walk away from Rangers. No one walks away from a club of that size. It was I keep using that word privilege. I always will do to my deathbed. That was an absolute privilege, and I loved every minute of being at Rangers. So therefore, why on earth would that happen? People then say, well, go and sue them in the courts, and there's rules. You can't, because English lawyers don't have acceptance in Scottish courts. They have the other way, but it doesn't work that way. And you're going to sit there and go, if you do take a club to court, it's going to last 18 months, 2 years or more, during which time probably won't get another job. And what we're doing here. But it was so wrong. It was so wrong. And you can tell from my voice now, it still rankles, because we did a really good job there. And, building a squad and in tough situation. And for people to think we'd walk away, one good thing, I found out that text messages go to 249, because I had 249 text messages and thought my box was full, and I deleted all. And I think I walked out of my apartment and down maybe 60 yards, and my inbox was full again, because I was getting battered. Someone had arranged them release, or someone had released my phone number. And I stayed and went and had dinner with Frank and David, and we had to be in Frank's house. We couldn't go out for obvious reasons. And that was it. That's how we learned. And that still rankles, because I'd always treat Rangers, I always will do. And there's some good friends there on the board now, some outstanding people and people at the club, and obviously people like James Tavernier and Dave Lovery, Craig Flanagan, some outstanding individuals. But for people to think, or then to give the impression that we would walk away, especially David Weir, Hall of Famer at the Rangers, it's the last thing he would ever do. So that's how we found out, Christy. Yeah, absolutely true.
I want to talk about that transition from first team manager to first team coach, because you obviously went to West Ham and had success with Moyes over last season. How do you adapt to that if you are in a position of leadership and you are the main person and you make the decisions in terms of how you play, etc., and then all of a sudden you're taking a step back in terms of working with a team and working with maybe other members in a different type of role? How do you adapt, and how do you think about that role in terms of you becoming successful within football still?
I'll say it again, great question, because I dealt with it very badly. I didn't enjoy it in that time. David and I, at the end, it was a case of I want to keep our friendship. We had to go separate ways. He's the manager. So my job was always to make his job easier. That was my job. I saw it very much as, okay, I've been manager, and before that in the city managing desks. So I've always been like that way. It's not about arrogance, Christy. It's not about ego. It's just that's what you're used to. What time are the boys in tomorrow? 8 o'clock. Last breakfast 8:30. Activation starts here. Warm up. You just go through it. What time's the coach leave? We're going to do this. Where are we staying? We're going to do that. Okay, what time's this? And medical meeting. Yeah, give me 10 minutes. And that's your life. And then suddenly you're going, oh, sorry, turn to manager one. And they go, what time's the coach leaving? Oh, hang on a second. And you're doing this and asking someone else. And I found that really difficult. But the other side was I wanted to work with Premier League players to see what world-class really is, and the likes of Declan Rice and Lucas Paqueta and Naya Fagard, world-class players. So that was a real privilege. But I found it really difficult. And as the season went on, David brought me in. He won't mind me saying this. There's nothing here that would ever harm our relationship, I'm sure. He brought me in because I've got a more attacking philosophy and he's got a more defensive philosophy. And he wanted to try and combine that. But I think when you've been he's managed Man U, he's had fantastic success on his CV. It's very hard for people to change, probably myself included. So it's very hard for people to change. So very quickly I found myself feeling underutilized and not offering as much to David I wanted to. My job was to help him. And then we had a poor start. We had no centre halves, injuries to Naya, brought him out for weeks and weeks, and lost Kurt Zuma and lost Craig Dawson, and Cressy got injured, and suddenly And the foreign boys who came in, outstanding players, were taking time to settle, and we had a poor start. Again, with expectation being so high after the wonderful 2 seasons before. But I found myself more and more disagreeing, more and more just not feeling that I was adding the value that I wanted to add. And as I say, the most important thing is to maintain friendship with David. So we won the final on the Wednesday, had the parade on the Thursday, phoned him on the Friday, and I said, look, I think we need to do it the right way, shook hands, and we remained very good friends, I'm sure, I hope very much. But I found it, to answer your question, really, really difficult. And you have to self-review, Christy. You have to look at yourself. I can't say, it was David's fault or the club's fault or Billy's fault. No, look at yourself. What should you have done differently? What could you have done differently? Various aspects like that. You have to look at it and say, what could you have done to make that process easier for all concerned? Obviously yourself, but all concerned. And I did that, but I must admit, I found it very, very difficult to do that. And I couldn't now contemplate that number 2 role. Not out of ego, as I say, not out of arrogance, nothing at all. Just about job satisfaction and knowing what you can add value-wise to a club organisation.
What qualities do you think David Moyes holds as a coach? Obviously, you mentioned his time at Man United, but more to the recent success in Europe. Was there anything that was that you seen as a kind of a coach that you didn't really think of maybe during your experiences, or challenged you on the way that you see coaching to be? Was there anything that stands out that was very successful to see the performances on the pitch of, and as well as winning silverware?
I think what I saw most is David's passion for the game. And I saw it a lot in Glasgow in terms of the likes of Walter Smith, Sir Alex, of course, Archie, and you look at the coaches, the great Scottish coaches, they've got a real passion, and David's passion for football, I'm sure it burns as bright as ever, and they commit wholeheartedly to the task at hand. Absolutely. But it's more that continual passion. And we would talk about this, and I'll still say it, David, probably, I doesn't mind me saying it, but I would say, take a day off. You would rarely, ever take a day off. And I'm saying, but you need to. Not out of, there's no laziness, there's no negativity. The fact of the matter is, you need to take a day off. Your body needs to read, go have a game of golf, but it's just not in the nature. And you read Sir Alex's books and similar types of things. It's just, Walter would come in and, that week, taking a day off. It's not weak. It's the way you got to look after yourself. But it was that passion for the game. He obviously loves the game. There's no doubt he loves the game, and he obviously enjoys passionately what he does. So that was the thing that you really. I saw David in a social scene. We would purely by chance. Christy went on holiday to the same place in Florida for years and years with their families, purely by chance. So we ended up playing golf and whatever else and talking different things. So I saw him in that very relaxed social scene, having a cold beer and everything else. But then you go into work and you realise he's a very intense individual in terms of that. As I said, we had that conversation, and so intense. And you can't expect others to match that intensity. I don't mean staff, I mean players sometimes. Or he's people in the Premier League, the money allows you to go and recruit from all over the world. And it's that was a burning thing. Answer your question, his intensity and passion for the game has not waned, as I can see, in any shape or form. So that's the overriding factors for me. And there's no doubt he'll keep on. David loves it. He loves what he does. He loves match day. He loves dealing with the tension and the pressure and the questions that the game poses and players pose. And he loves decision making, because I think leaders, they like making decisions as well, Christy. It challenges you. But I think at the end of the day, they like making decisions.
So Mark, final question. What I normally do with my guests is get them to reflect on their past or think about the future. And I think from our conversation, we've really elaborated on some of the things that have happened within your journey as a coach and within other industries. My question to you is, what does the future hold for Mark Warburton? Is there anything that you have set out in terms of you individually that you want to maybe pursue? Is there anything that you wish to continue to do? I'm intrigued on what's next for you in terms of your journey as a football coach.
Well, that's really, again, congratulate you on the quality of the questions, because that's so for me, I keep myself fit. I always have done, but I keep myself fit. I work every day, and so I feel in a good position to go and impact a really good job. I've got no desire whatsoever to retire, Christy. I'm very lucky in terms of done okay for myself in City and football. You're very fortunate. So I haven't got to go to work tomorrow to put food on the table, which many people have to do. So I'm very fortunate. But I've got at least another one really big project in me. I really want that challenge. I'm also very aware that the market over here in the UK is changing. There's a drive to recruit past former players, which I understand why, of course. And the clubs are going younger in terms of John Eustace, number 2, John, fantastic, did a great job at Birmingham, Michael Carrick, Rob Edwards, these guys, Kalian Rosina, ex-players coming in, which I understand that's been their profession since they left school. So I get that. But for people like myself, slightly older, I'm seeing the market change. And what you can't do is just sit and moan about it. I get phone calls from people saying, this is not right, this can't be good. But you can't moan about it, you have to find the solution. So I have a burning passion. I like the MLS. I've always wanted to go and work in the MLS. I won't digress too much, but I had 2 or 3 chances. I came very, very close down the last 2, a couple of the last 5, 6, 7 years after Forest, before QPR. Just recently, I just lost out on one. And I've got a desire because I've always liked a different challenge. And it really appeals to me. I've spent time over there. I was very fortunate to go and visit Brad Friedland in New England and to Seattle Sounders at San Jose, and different clubs and teams. But I've really got a passion to go and work in the MLS because it's just a different challenge completely. And, if I was to get offered the championship job tomorrow, I'd be very lucky, very fortunate. But I've done that. I've done Brentford, I've done Forest, I've done QPR, etc. So I've done, be very lucky there. And you only live once, and I love the idea of trying to take what you do, what you hope you do well, into a completely different environment and seeing if you can recreate the type of arena that people can thrive in and have success in. So, yes, very hungry to go and have that project, Christy, if that makes sense, and hopefully the opportunity will come along.
Absolutely, Mark. And from a personal point of view, I wish you all the best with that, whether that's in the MLS or wherever it is. You're destined to find your next pathway. I just want to wish you all the best. And from a personal point of view, just a reflection of this conversation, Mark, you speak very elegantly. You're very inspiring. I like how you relate to other industries and apply that within your practice, and has brought you significant success. So from a personal point of view, thank you for this conversation, and I wish you all the best with your journey.
Chris, I really enjoyed it, and thank you for the quality of questions. They were very pertinent, and so I enjoyed chatting. And if I can help, give me a call at any time.